A few days ago, as Rachel and I sat drinking our morning coffee, we heard a terrible noise overhead. We looked out the window, and all around, and then looked up to see hundreds of Canada geese honking in the sky, flying in a feed. Over the last couple months, these geese have made their annual migration from Canada to southern places. When the geese are young, they travel with their parents and learn where to go. As they mature, they form their own migration groups, and by instinct, travel to the same sites each spring and each autumn. Like other migratory birds, geese rely on an internal clock and compass to guide them. They do what their parents did, and what their parents did, and what their parents did. They do what the wondrous forces of evolution have knit into the fiber of their being. This internal clock enables the geese to know when to migrate, when to go. They do not try to fight it. It is not born of restlessness or despair. It is woven into the fabric of who they are. It is part of them. Migratory birds are not the only ones in creation governed by instincts. We too, as fellow creatures of the earth, have internal guides built into each of us. What do you believe is our truest instinct as creatures made in the image of God? What is our inmost longing driving us to live and to act? Jesus said that the greatest good is to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Indeed, we can only love God rightly when we love our neighbor made in God's image. And I believe it is for this that we are made, to love our neighbors. The great preacher Barbara Brown Taylor teaches that loving neighbor as self means encountering another human not as someone you can use or change, fix, help, enroll, convince, or control, but simply as someone who can spring you from the prison of yourself if you will allow it. Loving our neighbors as ourselves is the instinct God has created in us from the moment breath entered our bodies. This love is the internal clock guiding us. It gives us life and vibrancy. And when we are led by this instinct, we do not need to know what will happen or where we are going, or why we are there. Following this love as the internal compass within our souls gives us strength to face an uncertain tomorrow, because this love tells us who we are and why we are. This instinct to love knit within our souls is the essence of hope for the human race. This hope is a part of us. As I was talking about the migrating geese a few minutes ago, perhaps the more objectionable of you, or the more who are like me, it came into your mind that most of the time around these parts, geese don't actually migrate. We see them around all year long. In fact, the Massachusetts Audubon Society that says most of the geese now in Massachusetts never leave our borders. This is particularly true in urban and suburban areas. With their natural predators wiped out and reliable sources of water and food provided by humans, many geese have adapted ways to subdue their most natural instincts. These geese set up camp in urban places like parks and like golf courses. They eat our trash. They soil wherever they happen to be. and they can be quite nasty pests. A whole niche business has sprung up in the Boston area, I kid you not, called the geese police. Businesses and individuals pay huge sums to have problem geese taken away. Subduing their natural impulse to migrate with the seasons, the geese have become parasites, living bloated lives, dangerous lives, and causing chaos. I believe the very same thing can happen to us when we subdue our most natural instinct to love. We subdue it, we explain it away, all in the name of convenience. We explain it away in the name of security. We explain it away in the name of control. It does not take much imagination to see the lengths to which we go to ignore the divine command to love knit into the fabric of who we are. We turn one another into objects. Objects to use, objects to control, objects to lust after, objects to belittle, objects to hate. Who of us would want to be objectified like this? And yet we do it to one another. We do it for the sake of convenience. We do it for the sake of conforming to religious ideals. We do it to guard ourselves from loss. We do it to gain control. The great tragedy is that when we subdue our natural instincts to love our neighbor, we strangle the hope knit into the fabric of our being. The pain and disappointment that come from stifling who we are robs us of hope and weighs us down. In our gospel lesson today, Jesus told his followers to look at the trees. And there we see in the trees the natural progression from the death of winter to the life of summer. Leaves that sprout all on their own, without adaptation, without intervention. These leaves are a sign that the present barrenness will give way to new life. Jesus promised that there is hope woven into the courses of nature. And he told his disciples, be on guard so that your hearts are not weighed down with the worries of this life. Be alert, praying that you may have strength to stand before the Son of Man. In his life and in his death, Jesus taught us the way to stand in a world that would seem to tear itself apart. We must give in to the instinct of who God has created us to be. We must give in to the instinct to soar high, loving our neighbors and rejecting the convenience, power, and safety that would keep us crouched in fetid hovels of our own making. Loving ourselves and loving our neighbors springs us from the prison of self-interest and leads us into the way of abundant life. Jesus is our guide in this path. The incarnate God has taught us the way of love in a bruised and broken world. And in this season, at the head of a new year, we prepare our hearts to receive the gift of God with us. While the nights are long and cold, we kindle flames and hang up lights in this season. And these little lights twinkling in the darkness accomplish far more than the sum of the energy it takes to power them. Loving ourselves, loving our neighbors when it is hard, when it is inconvenient, when it is uncertain, shines the light of God's love into the darkest night of the world. The true instinct of love and compassion God built into us from creation is still alive. everything else is dark, when everything else would seem to cause despair. This is our hope for tomorrow.